Good afternoon, and thanks for coming. I hope you'll enjoy the presentation. When we look at Stellafane, Breezy Hill, the Harkness Porter telescope, the Springfield Mount, it's clear that an enormous amount of effort 100 and some years ago went into fixed eyepiece viewing in comfort with no setup and no breakdown and no contortions. And it then sort of passed out of common practice with one little blip in the 70s that I'll touch upon. But I've proceeded to take this very old idea and kind of bring it into modernity, and about to show you what that amounts to. So let's see. There we are. Now, the first bit would be, what were my motivations? And number one, and I suspect some of you know what I'm talking about here, I call going to bed guilt. You know, I have well-developed circadian rhythms. It gets dark pretty early in the VI. And, you know, there's dinner. You have to prepare it. You have to eat it. Enjoyable. You then need to kind of tidy up. And between then and when, you know, your body's telling you it's time to hit the sack, there's a limited amount of time. And these days we have distractions. You know, we have indoor lighting and we have the internet. So on many an occasion, 9 o'clock would come and I would feel my brain going, okay, you know, get up and go to bed, different buildings. And so I would leave the great room and head across the pool deck to the bedroom. My wife usually crashing around 8, me 9:30. And I would glance up. And St. John is an island in the US Virgin Islands, and it has pretty dark skies. There's some light pollution from another island and some street lights. So it's, I have a sky quality meter, and it's generally about 20.8. So it's pretty nice. The Milky Way is super obvious. So I would look up and I would either see a perfect first quarter moon or a sky filled with stars. And my immediate thought was, oh, I can't go to bed. I need to observe. But ultimately that would mean going and getting the gear and lugging and setting up and then observing, maybe some alignment. But because there's a chance of rain at any moment, that would be followed by unsetting up, breaking down, and relugging. And you know, it's hard to like do all that in less than maybe an hour and a half. And so all too many times I would just kind of shrug and shuffle off into the bedroom. But I felt guilty. And as I mentioned, circadian rhythms mean that I no longer stay up till midnight, and I really value a good night's sleep. It's got a lot to do with health. When I would set up, there's sort of the neck craning and the kneeling and the alignment and other contortions. And as we get older, you know, this physical demands are beginning to weigh on things. And so I observe less, but I feel bad about it. And on one evening, as I was crossing the deck and glancing up at a beautiful first quarter moon, and you know, I had this program where I'm going to look at the terminator every night through the whole cycle and just do that all the time and get familiar with things, you know, bring out an atlas. And I felt the guilt, and at that moment I looked up at one of the loft windows. It's a little window about like this. Now that was on the north side, but I knew there was one on the south side, and I had this sudden insight. I could do this thing. And what I actually remembered was a Sky and Telescope article from 1970 by a fellow named Oscar Knabb, K-N-A-B-B, in Indiana, South Bend, I believe. And he had done a polar equatorial telescope. And I thought, that should be possible here. So we have a villa with suitable geometry, and what's old is new again. Now, this is about the busiest slide I've got, but some of the historical information is worth noting. What is a polar equatorial telescope? And by the way, there's one, the remains of one, the bits of one, up at the Pink Clubhouse. So what you do is, typically the telescope would be placed outside, pointing at the ground, and underneath it would be a mirror that could be steered in right ascension and declination, and the eyepiece would penetrate the building, and you would then look in with the eyepiece never moving, and little knobs back then to move the mirrors. So, but the only way that works with a single mirror is that the beam path has to be at your latitude. So if you look at the ones that were done in New England, they're pointed about like that, but at a latitude of 18.3 degrees, it's a very shallow angle, so a very pleasant little small look down. And the first one that I've been able to find was done in Cambridge, UK in 1898. It was pretty big. It was called Sheepshank after its benefactor, 320 millimeter f/18.7, so big, long telescope. Back then, refractors, because they didn't have fancy glasses or aspherics or anything like that, or triplets, let alone, they were slow. By the way, that was 3 years after my father was born. That's another story. Alvin Clark did one in Cambridgeport, Massachusetts in 1908. Harvard installed the Garish polar refractor, a 310 millimeter. And there's Oscar Nab, 1B, I guess. And that's the article that was my inspiration. But then related elements are the Harkness Terra telescope, the Porter telescope, and the Porter Springfield mount. So these are all, now the Springfield mount didn't get you indoors, but it did give you a fixed eyepiece location. So there's a rich history in this area of this approach. And in fact, here's, I think this was courtesy of Al or Ken. Here's an outtake from Alvin Clark and Sons catalog. And it says, the words are a little small, "The observer sits in a room that may be heated in winter and is a complete protection from insects in summer. He looks down towards the south pole of the heavens in as comfortable a position as if he were sitting at a desk." And prices on application. Brought out by the Alvin Clark and Sons Corporation in the latter part of 1908. This is the Harvard 310 millimeter Garish. And remember, that's a big lens. So this looks small, but it's really pretty large. And here is the article that inspired me. There's Oscar Nab, there's his refractor, and there's the flat. And then Russell Porter weighs in. And there's just a few great lines here. He's quoting a Professor Turner. "It is especially important to those who regard astronomy as an amusement rather than as a profession that they should not be gradually weaned from it by discomforts, as is so often the case. With some device for bringing the eye end of the telescope into the comfortable study, the fascination of the work would be much more lasting. The matter is worth the attention of amateurs." And unquestionably, the greatest gain lies in the amateur being able to work in a closed, comfortable room, which is as much a part of the home as his den or living room. It is lighted and heated like the rest of the house. With all his books and data at his elbow, he will freely consult his references whenever a question arises at the eyepiece. A couch in the corner will allow him to make a night of it, if he chooses, without disturbing the household. The host may present to his guest the wonders of the universe with the same ease as showing him a beautiful painting in the library. And in closing this account, the writer feels quite ready to recommend this instrument, not to professionals, but to those persons who, appreciating the wonders of the heavens, have hitherto foregone the pleasures of astronomical work from a disinclination to submit themselves to its inconveniences. And he talks about when he first got a 6-inch refractor, at a consequence, months at a stretch would pass, especially during the colder weather, without the observatory being used. He thus missed some of the best nights of the year for seeing. When the new observatory was completed, the exact reverse obtained. Scarcely a clear night passed that he was not at work in the room, and that was written in Land's End in Port Clyde, Maine in December of 1915. So back in the day, refractors had very long focal ratios, and as such, their long tubes could only go outside. If you put them inside, they'd be penetrating the ceiling of the room they were intended for. And in addition, the entire telescope and the flat rotated together. But modern refractors have come a long way. We have very fast APOs in short tubes. We also have compound scopes like Machs and Schmidt-Cassegrains. So why not put the entire scope inside with only the flat on an exterior equatorial mount? And why stop at just one telescope? Now, I think I can hear some potential objections. What about air turbulence? We've long been taught, don't point a telescope out a window. Now, and because of the seeing disturbance from convection currents. But where I happen to live, it's very easy to have the interior and the exterior temperatures identical. But more to the point, there's a modern technological fix, which is Botter turbofilm. This is the material that they use for their solar filters, visual solar filters, but they'll sell it to you with nothing on it, so it's extremely high transmission, well over 90%. And according to Botter, perfect homogeneity performs equivalent to a 10th wave plane parallel optical window. And speaking of optical windows, there's now a market for energy rejection filters that are very flat and very parallel. So, you know, if there's any issue with turbofilm, and I haven't found it yet, we could always put glass in there. So it turns out we have, my wife and I own 2 villas on the Caribbean island of St. John. This is the view of the one where we've put the astronomical gear. And here you see the, and is the cursor visible? No, but is there a pointer or laser pointer by any chance? If you can find one, that'd be good. But you can see the small loft window there, and I've already perforated it with a circular aperture. And I then commissioned a very stiff truss tower from a company in Tennessee that makes rigging for lighting for theatrical presentations. And poured a concrete pad. There we are looking down through the loft window at the top of the truss tower. We have a tree on our other property that has a flamboyant, and you can see it blooming there. And when we come to the equatorial mount, I purchased a used Meade 10-inch LX200 fork mount. The largest aperture instrument is 7 inches, and so you'll see later where I commissioned a 9-inch minor axis flat. And the Meade fork was shortened. The arms were shortened because it doesn't have a big OTA, it just has a mirror. And it's on a massive Meade X-wedge, equatorially mounted. Now, there was a problem, which is that when you take a mirror and move it through 10 mechanical degrees, the optical path moves 20 degrees. That's just basic, you know, angle of reflection angle, for instance. But it turns out, so that was a problem, but I managed to find a fellow in Australia who's written a program that he gives away that allows you to hack the Meade firmware. And one of his options is to change the resolution. And so I was able to set it to half of what it normally is. So now when I ask for a 10-degree movement, I get a 5-degree movement, but it will be 10 degrees in the sky. So this was the original fork, and note the length of those arms. And here you can see where there's a casting on the left and the right that just magically was unboltable. I had to make that little silvery plate in between with some offset counterbores in our machine shop at work. Came up for a month or so, and that enabled me to make it a lot shorter. And there's also this machined part here that the flat will go on. And there it is where the mount will sit in there in that sling at the bottom with those little black washers merely prevent it from coming loose. They don't secure it. It's on 3 points, and it's a nice thick flat. Now this required quite a bit of trigonometry. This is about 6 feet out from the south side of the house, and the house is actually not facing exactly south. It's about 15 degrees off. So it was a lot of calculations. It's really hard to see it here. It's very faint, but there's a red dot right where that black arrow is, and basically it nailed it. So it's within 1/10 of a degree and a couple millimeters. Now, a very strange compound weldment had to be designed, and we built it on island. That's this fellow here. It's doing both the 18.3 degrees and the fact that the house is shifted. And I then commissioned a flat from Mike Lockwood out in Custom Optics. 0.07 wave peak to valley, and he's got a zygo interferogram confirming that. Here is the flat in the shortened mount. And this next picture I couldn't resist. I don't know if you can, yeah, I think you can see them there. Mangoes in the mirror. Those are some nice mangoes ripe in one of our trees and ready for picking. So the original title is that this is a multiplex instrument, quadplex. And this is the indexing mechanism. This is shown upside down. So there's THK rails, and the telescope mounts move relative to it, and it goes on top of that weldment. And then I had to build a weather enclosure up at the top of the truss tower, and that's running on plastic guideways that go on hard anodized aluminum rails, so they're weatherproof. And there it is with the mount open. Linear guideways. There's the stepping motor that actuates the weather enclosure. And there are 2 views of the lead screw and nut. It's 1.6 meters long, 10 millimeter lead, and then at the fixed end, so the cover opens, but at the fixed end there is guttering, so that it's extremely unlikely that any water ever gets in here. And it has stayed dry. In a talk at the Hartness House, a fellow there from MIT mentioned some automation at Wallace Observatory. And you can see there the RG11s, which can detect a single drop of rain. And then there are gutter downspouts for the guttering. And over on the right is the system controller with buttons and LEDs and an audible rain annunciator. And there is the Botter turbofilm in that little birdhouse. And the roof lifts up, and it's got a little gutter on it. And you can slide the Botter film in or out. Now, 4 optical systems index into the beam path. This is a bit of a busy slide, so let me just show you them. On the left is a Thomas Back. I had the opportunity to buy that triplet from him while he was still alive. 130 millimeter f6. And with the 31 millimeter Nagler, that will just fill my pupil with a very wide field. The middle scope is a Russian construction and design. It's a Maksutov Cassegrain, 7-inch f/15 with the binocular. The binocular thing can swap to multiple places. And then over on the right is a Lunt 80 millimeter hydrogen alpha telescope with dual stacking pressure tuners. In the front here is a calcium K filter, which will go on the TMB. And on the right there is a Teleview night vision system, which is truly remarkable. I didn't bring it when I left the island 2 weeks ago, but you look up at the sky and it's just thousands and thousands of stars, and it basically makes any instrument as if it were 3 times the aperture. The fourth instrument is a high-resolution fiber-fed solar spectroscope. It is really beautiful to see the solar spectrum with all of the lines. And in this case, the collector is on that tripod, and the fiber goes in, and it goes down, hits a grating, comes out to the viewing telescope with its diagonal, and you can see there that the lid has an arc in it so that you can swing it through the entire range of the spectrum. And here's another view a little closer. It's gorgeous and of so much physical significance. Here is a digital inclinometer. Our latitude is 18.32 and 18.35. Pretty much nailed it. There's the electronic control box. Momentary open and close buttons. And since I took this picture, I've added feed-throughs for the handbox controller for the Meade and also an auto-guider function. And so here's a view up in the loft of the instruments mounted on the indexing THK mechanism and pointed out the portal. And there's another view sort of straight on. I didn't open the portal because of the glare, I couldn't get a good photo. And there is the padded, adjustable height, leather armchair. So I do have a couple of other quick presentations, but if anybody actually I wrote this before I realized that this is being recorded and will be available once the Stellafane webmaster kind of gets back. So at some point you can all access it, but if you'd like to email me, I'd be happy to send you a copy. And now, Mark, how do I hit minimize it? There's some other things. There we go, down here. So if I just hit this, there we go. And now, slideshow from beginning. Oh, okay. So I can just index through. The right click isn't working. The left click isn't working anymore. This one maybe? This one. Close that. Left click isn't doing it. Maybe I'll just, yeah.
Okay, so yeah, go to the slideshow from beginning.
Here we go. Okay, good. So in that same vein of it must be easy to use, I did not make this telescope, I purchased it, but I got a 24-inch Dobsonian on a dual axis equatorial mount with a roll-under roof observatory. We'll see that in a moment. So what you see here is a long building. The first part has a green roof, and the second part has a silver roof. And you see a large Dob, And that basically lowers and rolls into the northern, this axis is exactly north-south. It rolls into its storage unit, which is the green roof. But a motorized, this silver roof rolls under the green roof, exposing a imaging observatory. And those are solar panels on the left there. So the telescope rolls out on rubber wheels and V-tracks, but that would be way too bouncy. And so you can see 3 balls there, one of which is adjustable. And those mate to a Maxwell clamp, which is a trihedral, a V, and a flat. And so I have a little mechanism that lifts it up a little bit, lets it dock on those, and that's rock solid. They are adjustable in height to get the correct orientation for polar alignment vertically. And the ball that engages the V is adjustable there, and that's what swivels it. And so drift alignment will be used to nail the polar alignment. A company called Equatorial Platforms makes the Equatorial platform. It's dual axis. You can see arcs at the at the left-hand side. And there's a stepping motor that drives them. And then there's actually that white disc at the front is on a cam mechanism and goes up and down to do declination. So it's a 2-axis, f3.5. There's the rocker box. It's all aluminum welded construction. Really, Tom Ostapowski does just a great job. It's just very high quality gear. There you can see the upper cage. It's called a Spica Eyes. Lockwood Custom Optics, who did the flat for the siderostat heliostat, also made the 24-inch primary here. There's an Optec Leo focuser, and then a Starlight Instruments manual focuser with a SIPS, which is an integrated paracore. But for imaging, I also have the large paracore. Now, as I think you all know, when you get a large Dob, you tend to get ladders. But I didn't want ladders. This is a ladderless design. And you see here, this is the west boardwalk with drawbridges. We'll see how they work in a moment. Here is the east boardwalk with posh bench seating for people who are literally on deck to observe. And you'll notice that the eyepiece height is extremely comfortable there. Plus I have a cat's eye observing chair, which makes it extremely comfortable. It's got the optional padded cushy seat. And there's a view where you can see both the east and west boardwalks. So this is rapid rollout, rapid dock, lower the drawbridges, no ladders, ease of use. If it isn't easy, it tends not to happen. And there's the viewing platform with both drawbridges down. And there is another docking spot, I haven't put the balls in yet, in that opening between the storage structure and the first, the left-hand drawbridge there. And there's a view from behind the seating bench with the drawbridges down. You can see that the horizon is actually pretty unobstructed. They need to be cut, but that's still very low stuff. And here is the roll under roof imaging observatory. So that silver roof with the gear motor on the right there goes underneath, and I can image from this location. That's an Astro-Physics Mach 2 GTO mount, and I believe I got the first one in the country because somebody on the list backed out at the last minute. I was on the list, but I wasn't number 1. There's the electronics that makes it all go, including a fanless AMD computer on the wall there. And there's the gear motor that drives the rack. One of the instruments is imaging instruments is a Takahashi E180ED hyperbolic astrograph, again with an Optec Leo. And you can see some of the view there there's about 20 some islands in the view. Sunsets all year round. And I mentioned the blooming flamboyant. There it is in the distance. It's gorgeous. That's right around now for maybe another couple of weeks, and started about 2 months ago. That's the end of that slideshow. If you could maybe make sure that I don't screw anything up as we... So I'm going to close this one, right? A little jittery, there we go. And number 3. And then, do I just do slideshow from beginning? Now this is, and this is up there, yeah, great. Now this is old, but I had designed and built a very nice equatorial sundial years ago at this villa, not the one we live at. And it was Peter Bilow who alerted me to the fact that there was actually an organization called the North American Sundial Society. I had no idea. And it was about 2 weeks out from their annual meeting in Cambridge, so I put together a little presentation there. I've been making sundials since I was a kid, popsicle sticks in the beach sand of Atlantic City, where I was born and raised. And I read books on sundials over the years. And maybe 20 years ago, I came up here to Stellafane, and up on Breezy Hill was a beautiful wooden equatorial sundial. And I was just smitten. And he had free printouts of like what he had done. And I kept those over the years. And in 2013, I got to work on one of my own. So in 2010, we had purchased coconuts, and this seemed like a good place to put it. Uh, 18.3 degrees, it's all brass. I cast the floral concrete column and footing and worked with a guy at work to CNC engrave the brass time strip, which slides to implement the equation of time corrections. So there we are making the time strip. Originally it was a paper one, but we ended up making a brass one. And so that's the image. So basically there's a wire that is connected to the time strip, and you set the wire on the time of year, and that implements the correction for the equation of time. And there it is there's the original paper version, didn't last long, and there's the brass version being made. Did I skip 2 or? Yes. This is a good one. I don't know how many of you can you read the, yeah, you should be able to read the legend. You know, some sundial legends are a little dark, relating to mortality. I went upbeat with this one. And it's very accurately aligned to our latitude. That gnomon, the thing that casts the shadow, is at our latitude. And if you make the correction for the equation of time, it's good to about a minute. And there's a picture. And another with the bougainvillea blooming in the background. And hey, isn't that nice? And I think that's it. Oh, yeah. So when you go down the stairs to this lawn, I mentioned that you're not just walking onto the lawn. You are entering Le Jardin du Temps, the Garden of Time. And there's a very nice J.G. Ballard short story. So there we go with that one. And then the last bit, and I don't see the hoverer yet, so I think I'm doing okay time-wise. I'll close this one. Did I? No. Whoop. Save changes? Okay. Okay, what's going on here? So, I highly recommend, everybody in this audience is ripe for this. You can go on Amazon and look up like a glass pyramid or something like that, and for a few bucks, they'll sell you, it looks like a prism, but I don't know that there's any optical reason to ever have a pyramid, four-sided prism. But it's got a flat base, four sides that are at about 70 degrees. It's about yay high, maybe 2¼ inch, 2½ inch base. And in our kitchen, we have a window facing east, and it's an arched window, so it's got the part you can open, and then it's got a little half cylinder on the top with a vertical spoke and 2 spokes going like that. And with no planning whatsoever, I just took it and went, put it up there and went chunk. And it lodged securely. It has never fallen out. But what it does is project a beautiful solar spectrum that varies depending upon the time of the year. And here you see it on the back of a chair. I think I should probably X, there we go. And here it is poking out of the top of our TV. Here it is on a kitchen cupboard. Gorgeous. You know, any morning you're out in the kitchen making breakfast and you see stuff like this and you can never tell quite, because on any given morning it moves around and then it moves with the seasons. And it's that latter bit that I want to touch on here. So there it is on our tile floor. Gorgeous and much longer because it's not foreshortened. But look at what it's pointed to on the right there. It's that white column. And what that is the spiral staircase to the Armchair Astronomy loft. And for a week and a half, either side of the summer solstice, it's sitting right on that white, vertical steel column. And took me a little while to figure out, oh, it's the solstice, but it is. And so it's just, it's like a little household Stonehenge, with celestial alignments. So I think that's all we have there. And just, I'll leave you with one last image. Oh yeah, here we go. Quick glance at our view, which is really pretty nice. So over in the southwest, and this is annotated, and I'll scroll to the right. Now we're looking at St. Thomas, 4 miles across Pillsbury Sound, and then up to the northwest. And it's a magical place. If you haven't been there, I encourage you to visit St. John. 2/3 of the island is a US national park. So you'll be on these beaches. There's 30-some that are among the finest in the world. It's in the US. It's easy to get to, 4 hours from Boston. And anywhere else with beaches of that beauty, with islands you can swim right out to and snorkel with schools of fish, there would be high-rises. And you turn around and you see virgin green mountainside, and it will be that way in perpetuity, thanks to Lawrence Rockefeller, who also created Acadia National Park and Grand Teton. He bought up 2/3 of the island with Frank Stick back in the early 50s, was thinking of developing it, had a change of mind, donated it to the US government, they made it a national park. So pretty nice place, and invite you to join. And if there's any ATMs who make it down there, my contact information's up there, be happy to show you the gear. So with that, I will turn over. If there's any questions, happy to field them. Yes? Pardon? I don't remember the exact name of it. If there's connectivity, you just go on Amazon and glass pyramid, maybe, or prism, but you'll know it when you see it. I wanted to go up at the bunkhouse and get a URL and actually show it to you, but I ran out of time before this happened. But I've found it again, it says buy again. I've bought them and given them away. All you need is a window that faces east or south or west that has sunlight coming in, and you might have to jigger like what I was lucky. I just like popped it in the window and it's amazing. But for certain orientations, you might have to put it on a little something and orient it, but it's just gorgeous. And to have such a daily changing with the time of the sun and the time of the year, it really just focuses you on that whole seasonal thing, and it's beautiful, and it's good physics as well. So everybody, get yourself a glass pyramid and put it in your window. Your life will be richer for it. Oh, he's found it. Can you, there we go. Whoa, $21.99. Oh no, that's the 4-inch. You don't need that bigger one. Yeah, I got one that's like maybe 2.3, but you're really close. Look for one, no, that's got etching. How about, no, that's got interior things, but you're getting real close. Oh, there, what's that? No, that's, well, the 4-inch will work, and at $21, it doesn't break the bank, but there is a smaller one. In fact, click on that one and look at people also bought or looked at. Scroll down a bit. What size is that? There, 2-inch. That's what I bought, $8.99. Get one, get 3, give them away. It's just awesome. It's not like optical, it's not quarter wave, doesn't have to be, means you don't have to worry about scratching it, just put it in the window. And like I say, I don't believe there's any optical purpose of such a thing, but it just is awesome. Yes? Yes, so they're all on ADM dovetails. And I haven't yet mounted the feed for the fiber spectroscope. I had hoped to get that done before I left Island 2 weeks ago, but ran out of time. But the 4 of them, the wide field, high mag, hydrogen alpha, and the wide field also does calcium K, which thanks to my cataract surgery, I can see wonderfully well. Yes, they all index, slide back and forth. There's only one beam path, and so you just choose what instrument you want, slide it over, and just a witness mark. Slide it to there, you're good to go. So, and it's useful in the daytime for white light through the 7-inch Maksutov Cassegrain with a Botter film, in calcium K with the TMB 130F6, in hydrogen alpha with the Lunt 80 millimeter double stacked. So 3 different ways to view the sun in the daytime, and then with the maximum coming in a few years, and then at night, wide field, high power, craters, planets, that kind of thing, but also rich wide field, and then the ability to mount the Teleview night vision system, which effectively makes the 130 millimeter a 400, and the 7-inch a 21-inch, and the main point is easy, right? When I'm downstairs and I've finished dinner and dishes are cleaned up, it's like, go on up the spiral staircase, push a button, the weather enclosure opens, take the hand controller, decide where I'm gonna go, select the instrument, and sit with one viewing angle and just enjoy. It's gotta be easy, and as you get older, the lugging really begins to chafe. So this is my solution, and it is in a very time-honored tradition, and in particular, this location right here, right? Between Hartness and 2, the turret and the Polar Equatorial up at the clubhouse, and the Springfield mount. It was a big thing, and then it kind of faded away. And I think it's time to bring it back, with the novel bit being, since scopes are short, bring them on indoors, and all you have to put out there is the flat. Yes?
Just a comment about the
Nice. Yes, yes. It is such a positive thing. Glad to hear that second the motion and second the emotion, and it's just wonderful. Yes, yes. Daily uplifting art and science. There was a hand somewhere, yes. Do you mean the equatorial mount? Oh, the sundial, yes. It's a sundial. So you just walk up to it, and on any sunny day, you look where the shadow falls, that's the time. I joke to guests who rent the villa, you can set your phone by it. They can't seem to find the little winding stem to pull out and do the adjustment. So. The equation of time and so you slide the strip every couple of weeks to adjust for the fact that the sun is actually not an accurate clock. Complex thing about the orbit and tilt. But when you do that, it's telling you local time. It is entirely precise. It'll match what's on your phone, and it'll do so within about a minute. And maybe I'll just go back briefly, and you can see a little more closely. Yeah, let me find a picture of it here. I machined the brass, but I had a company. So there you see a wooden version. So it's just two arcs that intersect. So what you see here is the legend, which is screwed down, and then the time strip, which fits into a slot in the brass that I machined before it was rolled into the arc. And that, you just grab it at the end and shift it a few millimeters depending upon the time of year. And it's called an equatorial dial. So there you see a better view of it. And so right now that shadow, you can see the gnomon with a little pineapple thing on each end. And you can see the shadow, and that's looking like maybe 11 o'clock or something. And that's really all it is. And you can also see that the strip doesn't quite make it to the end of the groove there. So it shifts, it slides a few millimeters. And I think there's another picture where the adjustment is you grab. Yeah, held in place with friction. There. If you look in the upper picture, you can see that I've actually machined a little finger grip. It's a little out of focus, actually. I probably picked the wrong picture. But you set the wire on the time of year, and over on the left of that U-shaped thing is a soldered-on little finger grip. And so you just grab that and push it left to right, and the entire strip moves with it. And you put the wire on the time of year, and you're done. And as it says in the instructions there, slide time strip to align wire with date. Comes with instructions. No, whenever. You look at your phone. By the way, speaking of phones, I consider smartphones the spawn of Satan. So I have one of these. It both makes and receives calls. But you look at your phone, you look at the time, and you slide the time strip till it's reading the time, and now you're good for 2 or 3 weeks, depending upon the time of year. Oh yeah, there's a little math involved here, but you only do it once, and then you're good to go. Yeah, it depends upon the radius of the arc. Yep. Had a lot of fun. Used a darkening thing to oxidized, blackened the grooves, and then did a little Scotch-Brite, and then put a urethane coat on it. Yes?
How many days a year can you use that sundial?
In St. John, almost every day. There are overcast days. They terrify us. They're rare, and when they do happen, everybody's like, doesn't know what to do. But usually there are deep blue skies, 20.8 magnitudes per square arc second, with the Milky Way very visible. There are sculling white clouds, like little puffy cotton ball clouds, and they come through. So you do throw away some images, but in between it's nice and dark. And also, the island is not especially skilled at making electricity. So very regularly, the power goes out. Now, I have a pair of Tesla power walls at each villa, so we just noticed the lights flicker briefly. But with my sky quality meter, I can't remember the exact, but it jumped from 20.8 to like 21.4-ish when the power went out on the island. So pretty dark, but we have our work cut out to, and I'm working with the National Park Service to try to put full cutoff on the street lights and so on. Yes?
Was the Virgin Islands affected by Hurricane Maria?
We were devastated by Hurricane Irma, which was September 6th of 2017. And my villas were beat up, sustained about $500,000 of damage. We were fortunate in that we were insured and that they are masonry structures. There were many people on island with wood frames that became literally debris piles. And some of those people didn't have insurance. So our population actually dropped after Irma, and it was also tourism dropped a lot. And then a couple years later, we had the pandemic. So the island, it's 9 miles wide by 5 miles high and has a population of about 3,000 permanent residents. And during the spring and summer of 2020, our governor banned tourism due to COVID. And so my wife and I would be on some of these iconic beaches that are like, people have them on their phones just as a picture that they downloaded because they're so awesome. And there might be another couple, So it was a strange time, but almost like post-apocalyptic. There were no people, but we got through it, and things are back now, and there's lots of people visiting. And like I say, it's a very nice place.
So with the indexer, it looked like it was mounted either to the wall or to the floor of the second floor. So is there an issue with vibration?
No, the weldment bolts via big half-inch lag bolts into anchors in the masonry wall. 2 bolts on the upper right, 2 bolts on the upper left, and 2 bolts at the diagonal. It's entirely bolted to the masonry wall. So you can go like this, and the image... Oh, the other bit is, we always want our mounts to be stiff, right? And I've had a lot of mounts over the years, and even the Astro-Physics Mach 2 GTO on its pier, there's a little something going on there. And when I finally tightened the last lag bolt on this thing, I'm hitting where the main part, and I have never seen any mount remotely that it's just like there's nothing going on, So stiff as all get out, and remember, the motion is only that of this lightweight flat mirror way out there. So it's very, very quadplex. Yes? A good question. To the south, and my southern meridian is actually really low. So to the south, there is some vegetation, but I could get down to maybe 15 to 20 degrees. And basically, there isn't a lot that you're going to want to look at below there. On the northern part, I'm ultimately interrupted by the gutters on our structure. Now, it's a hip roof at a shallow angle. So, and the mirror is intentionally 6 feet out from the house and not that far below that. So I can get within, I forget, but I think it's within like 30 degrees of Polaris. And remember that anything down here eventually comes up there. So if you wait till the right time of year, it turns out in a 30-degree radius around, or maybe it's 25, around Polaris, there isn't a lot to see anyhow. So I can get M81 and M82.
But there are no inherent blind spots.
No. So that flat mirror, if it pivots to the eastern horizon, that's what's going up the path. If it pivots to the west, that's a full sweep. And then in declination, it's limited only by vegetation for the far south and the structure itself for the very, and which all of those other polar telescopes suffered from in spades, because they were on the lower stories of buildings.
I hate to interrupt this.
Okay.
But we've got to get set up for the next speaker. Let's thank Kevin McCarthy again for a great presentation.
You're very welcome.